My name is Mr. James Parker, and today I'd like to share with you the story of how I became fluent in English. It's a long journey, filled with challenges, lessons, and experiences that I hope will inspire you to continue learning English, no matter where you are in your journey. When I first started, English seemed like an impossible mountain to climb, but little by little, step by step, I managed to make it to the top. I'll take you through how I did it and how you can do the same. Early beginnings. The struggles of learning. I grew up in a small town where English wasn't the primary language spoken. At home, my family spoke our local dialect, and English felt foreign and distant. We only learned English in school, and even then, it was limited to grammar rules and vocabulary lists. I remember sitting in class, staring at the blackboard, trying to understand why English was so complicated. The teacher would explain tenses, conjugations, and irregular verbs, but it didn't seem to stick. The first major challenge I faced was understanding spoken English. Reading and writing were one thing, but when I tried to listen to native speakers, I couldn't follow at all. The words seemed to run together in an endless stream of sound. I felt frustrated. I would spend hours after class, rewinding tapes and listening to the same sentences over and over again, hoping to catch the rhythm and flow of the language. The turning point, immersion. Things began to change when I made a decision that would completely transform my approach to learning. I immersed myself in English. Immersion doesn't mean moving to an English-speaking country, though that helps. It means surrounding yourself with English as much as possible, wherever you are. I started watching movies and TV shows in English with subtitles. At first, it was hard and I couldn't understand much. But gradually, I began to pick up words and phrases. I made it a habit to pause and repeat dialogues, mimicking the pronunciation of native speakers. It was like having a private tutor at home. My ears began to adjust to the natural speed of the language, and I started understanding more. In addition to watching media, I listened to English radio stations and podcasts. I would play them in the background while I worked or did chores. Even if I didn't catch every word, I was training my brain to get used to the sound of English. This constant exposure was key to my progress. Learning to speak, breaking the fear barrier. Even after gaining a basic understanding of English, speaking was still a challenge. I was afraid of making mistakes, of sounding foolish. But then I realized something important. Mistakes are a necessary part of learning. The more mistakes I made, the more I learned. To improve my speaking, I started having conversations with myself in English. It sounds funny, but it works. I would narrate my day, talk about how I felt, or describe things around me. This practice gave me confidence to speak out loud. Soon, I moved on to speaking with others. Finding conversation partners was essential. I joined online forums and language exchange programs where I could practice speaking with native English speakers. I also found friends in my local area who were learning English, and we would have conversation meetups to practice together. I learned that speaking is a skill like any other. You only get better with practice. Building vocabulary, making words stick. One of the most important aspects of becoming fluent is having a large vocabulary. But simply memorizing lists of words doesn't work. I tried that method early on and it was ineffective. Words would slip away as soon as I learned them. What changed for me was learning words in context. Instead of memorizing random words, I focused on phrases and sentences. I would read articles, books, or even social media posts and write down any new words I encountered. I'd look them up and use them in my own sentences. Over time, this helped me build a working vocabulary that I could actually use in conversation. I also use the spaced repetition system, SRS, which is a method of reviewing words at increasing intervals. This technique helped me retain new vocabulary long-term. Every day, I would review a handful of words, and gradually, my vocabulary grew without feeling overwhelmed. Grammar. The backbone of fluency. Grammar is often seen as the most boring part of learning a language, but it's essential. Without grammar, sentences don't make sense and communication breaks down. For a long time, I struggled with grammar. I could speak, but my sentences were broken or incorrect. To fix this, I dedicated a part of my study routine to grammar practice. I used grammar apps and websites that explained rules in simple terms and provided exercises. I didn't focus too much on learning every rule at once. Instead, I focused on applying grammar in conversation. For example, if I was learning the past tense, I'd make it a point to tell stories about my past in English. This helped me internalize the rules instead of just memorizing them. Reading, a window into English. Reading is one of the best ways to improve your English, and it was a huge part of my learning journey. I started with simple books and articles. Reading allowed me to see how sentences are constructed and how words are used in different contexts. One strategy one found helpful was extensive reading. Instead of trying to understand every word in a text, I would focus on understanding the overall meaning. This allowed me to read more, which exposed me to a wider variety of vocabulary and expressions. Over time, this improved not only my reading skills, but also my writing and speaking. Writing, from simple to complex. At the start of my journey, my writing skills were poor. I could write basic sentences, but my essays were full of errors. To improve, I started a daily writing journal. Each day, I would write a short paragraph about my thoughts, feelings, or experiences. At first, it was hard, and my sentences were clumsy. But with practice, my writing became smoother and more natural. I also used online platforms where native speakers corrected my writing. This feedback was incredibly valuable. Each time I made a mistake, I learned something new. Over time, I moved from writing simple paragraphs to writing more complex essays and stories. The importance of patience and persistence. Fluency doesn't happen overnight. It took me years to reach a level where I felt truly comfortable speaking, writing, reading, and listening in English. But what I've learned along the way is that persistence is key. There were many times when I felt discouraged, but I kept going. Learning English, like any skill, requires consistent effort. You have to be patient with yourself. Some days, it will feel like you're making no progress, but over time, every small step adds up. Advice for English learners. If I were to give advice to anyone learning English, it would be this. Immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Surround yourself with English media, whether it's movies, podcasts, or books. Practice speaking as often as you can, even if you make mistakes. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become. Learn in context. Don't just memorize words or grammar rules. Use them in sentences, stories, or conversations. Read and write every day. Start small, but be consistent. Over time, your skills will improve. Be patient and don't give up. Fluency takes time, but with persistence, you'll get there. Conclusion. Today, I'm proud to say that I'm fluent in English, but the journey doesn't end here. Learning a language is a lifelong process. There's always something new to discover, whether it's a new word, an idiom, or a cultural insight. I'm still learning, and I encourage you to keep learning too. No matter where you are in your journey, remember that every small effort counts. Keep going, stay motivated, and before you know it, you'll be speaking English with confidence and fluency.
Subscribe for more videos. Your support helps me create more content. Thanks for watching.